Welcome to X-Men Evolution, episode 51, Ascension, part 1 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast. One more episode to get this right.
So close.
Actually, this is my last one doing that for Evolution.
Yep.
Also, happy holidays. I'm trying to be festive. This is a shirt that JC got me last Christmas, and Lucy's in her... Oh, it's not focusing. Anyway, she's in her Christmas tree outfit that also lights up. If I go back here, we'll focus. There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
She's so still. It's like, you're like, oh, it's my cat that's back there. Sure,
Right.
The statue. Yeah.
I'm Rod, and boy, I can't wait to talk about these 2 episodes, because where the fuck has this show been all series?
No lie, I knew that's what you were going to say to some extent. Not that exact phrasing, but I was going to be like, Rod definitely loved these 2 episodes. There was no doubt in my mind.
This is the show's fine. This is the show that I wanted to watch, though.
Right. And I am JC, and at the time of recording this, Marvel Rivals has been out, and I just gave a rating to our friend of the podcast, Greg Miller from Kinda Funny, Tim's co-host, and I said it is an 11 out of 10 because Hawkeye's ultimate move can kill an entire teammate an entire team if you pull it off properly.
So I've seen stuff about Rivals being great, but I didn't know it was coming out. I don't know what kind of game it is. Is it like a strategy thing?
It's a hero shooter, so think Overwatch, but it's all Marvel characters instead. So
gotcha.
There's lots of archetypes like that you would see from Overwatch, and there's like an equivalent character within it. So the X-Men are somewhat represented right now. You have Wolverine, who I do not like the art style for. He's like very, very wide. You have Psylocke, Magneto, and there's one other mutant. Oh, Storm is in there, of course.
Nice.
And then there's leaks saying that like Cyclops is going to be in the next batch and stuff like that. You have pretty solid like your main 6 Avengers in there, and then there's like random ones like Jeff the Land Shark, who is just a fucking menace.
Okay.
Who is actually, I found out, voiced by our friend Jonathan Bailey. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know he did voiceover.
Yeah, John Bailey's doing voiceover.
Oh, okay.
He usually does lots of Transformers stuff. Like he's been Soundwave a bunch in Transformers and stuff like that.
Did he say this to us and then I just forgot?
I don't know. I don't know when the last time you saw him was. But Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly, and I say that for the second, or the last time for me saying that, podcast series. We're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode that we can find. This podcast started with the original 1992 X-Men The Animated Series, which was building up originally to the release of X-Men 97. And along the way, we launched our companion show, the Xavier Files, which is interviews with members of the X-Men community. And since season 2 of X-Men 97, to our knowledge, is still about a year's off, we're finishing our first ever watch through of X-Men Evolution.
Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that started and now ended over 20 years ago. There will be spoilers. If you don't want spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. And we're currently not sponsored by or affiliated with Marvel Animation, Disney, or Disney Plus in any way.
Don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, Threads, and Facebook.
And now onto the show. Today we're going to be talking about Season 4, Episode 8, titled Ascension Part 1. It aired on October 18th, 2003, and currently sits at 8.1 star rating on IMDb. That's right. Okay. yeah, this is, I guess if anybody hasn't been keeping track, the first part of a 2-part series finale.
Yes.
I think I can confidently say that now, because we'll get into it more, definitely, in the next episode, but this was more of a finale than people let us on, I feel like, to me. So,
dude, I was gonna say the same thing, and we could dive deeper onto it, but I did do some digging, and they knew partway through the production of the season that the season was going to be ended. So it wasn't what a few people alluded to, where they found out with no notice. There was enough time that's why it gets the moments that it does at the end of it. So, because I was under the impression it was a full-fledged cliffhanger, but thankfully that's not what we get here.
Yeah, it's like, it'd be like if they ended where Rogue pushed Mystique off the cliff, and they're like, all right, series is over. Like,
yeah, bye.
I mean, this one, I would argue, was pretty, like, just as much of a cliffhanger and a finale as like the 92 series finale. Like, yeah, I wanted more, but like the story had a conclusion. but also had an open end.
I think it's because at one point it was set to go for a 5th season. So they had already started laying the groundwork for season 5. Yeah. So that's why it did have a pullback. Whereas as far as we know from all the conversations with the Leewalds on X-Men, the animated series, that was 4 seasons and then got the last bump of additional episodes for season 5. Whereas this was 5 seasons and it got pulled back to 4. So I think that's the difference of it. It
is weird to have like such a short season, especially in this era where everything had like, well, even 20 some odd episodes would be kind of short, right? Because Power Rangers had like 64 episodes or something a season.
I don't know if I've looked up like the cartoon stuff, but I do know like, Power Rangers was like 50 to 60 episodes. Yeah. Like we talked about it before. The Green Ranger saga happened in the 30s.
Yeah. And I guess to be fair, that was a daily or a weekday series. And this was like a weekly thing, but still like 8 episodes for a season is like a really, really short season. Now it's standard, but
yeah. But it was also because of the weird timing that, we've hit it over the head, but the last season ended like literally started with a couple episodes, then flowed right into this, and it was every week for basically like 3 months, and then that's how it ended. So
and now we're done.
Season is really loose in terms of X-Men Evolution.
It's an epilogue.
Yeah.
The previously on X-Men is basically just like flashbacks of Mesmero dealing with Apocalypse. They remind us that Mystique is, quote unquote dead.
It went back to the season finale of season 3. So,
and then at least they didn't. They stayed consistent. They just went straight into the story. In Egypt, Apocalypse's ship, I guess, appears and like unearths a big pyramid.
Yeah, I forgot what that thing was called. It had a name, and I just forgot what it was called. But
it was something like vehicle or vessel or something like that.
Yeah, apparently there was a giant metal pyramid that all the archaeologists never knew was underneath the Sphinx.
Right. And then it kind of just like docked on the top of the pyramid. Apocalypse floats out. Then you actually see how he'd been creating the orbs that look like domes. And then we find out from a zoom out to Mesmero that this is the 3rd dome, which is. So I was trying to put together, it's like there's 4 locations. I started losing track, so like, if someone catches like something not on, just like we have the right idea. There's 4 of them out there. Yeah. We can mess up some of the geography here.
So the weird part is there's 2 in Egypt. You have the Sphinx in Egypt, and then the other pyramid in Egypt.
Maybe that's what it was, but also like just how fast they flash between all the locations, and that 3 of them were like the actual like. I don't know, satellites or something. Like 3 of them were like the orb things, and then like the Sphinx was like the headquarter thing or whatever.
It was like the central command essentially.
Yeah, and then when they threw in the horsemen, it just like threw me off. But we'll get into that next episode. I was like, where are we?
So good thing I'm doing the next episode. Is what you're saying.
I tried because. I just watched this a few hours ago, and even then I was like, I don't know if there's enough time to keep going back, and then I just didn't recognize some animation. Anyway, it's a whole thing. But then we see, I guess Mesmero is part of a circus now or something. They didn't really get into that.
That's where he was the first time that Xavier and the team encountered him back when he possessed the students.
Oh, okay, And this is why I watched the episodes 2 hours before we record. So Wolverine.
To be fair, we also watched that like before X-Men 97. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah. But also like I don't know. It's the reason I can't read comic books very well and stuff like. The memory's not there. But Wolverine like
slices TikTok brain rot.
I just think it's 42 in stress.
Okay.
And just me. But the Wolverine slices his way in. Very dramatic manner, because he's running from like wall to wall, and he chases him out into the abandoned circus, I guess, carnival or whatever. No one else is there except for him, or so fast asleep. Well, I guess we'll see. Like maybe Jean put him all to sleep or something. Who knows? And chases him until Jean like is able to just like get him in a. I don't know.
Yeah, telekinetically just throws him and tries to break his back.
Yeah. There's a lot of violence these last 2 episodes, which I'm gonna say I like, and then people are gonna laugh at that. Not just because it's violent, but also it's like it just tracks better as a superhero show. You know, when things are just like a little bit more. It's not like I feel like in previous episodes, like, oh no, Toad is gonna be annoyed by that thing. It's like he just got flung across the desert. Like, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't he be like lost his head anyway? And then that's where we have the opening title.
That's where we get to the animated intro. Yep.
When we come back from that, they're back at the mansion, and Jean says she scanned his mind, and from what she can tell, Apocalypse had abandoned him.
I love that happened. It was like dude literally unlocked Apocalypse from his millennium jail.
Yeah,
millennial jail is a whole different issue.
That's sick.
And he just said, "Fuck it, you're on your own." He gave him nothing for doing it, which is the best Apocalypse shit to do. timeless social commentary about that though, because Mesmero literally has the same information that Jean just got, but Jean realizes that he was abandoned. Mesmero still doesn't want to believe it. Yeah, he starts pleading back like, "Oh, he'll be back for me." It's like, "Oh, you're in denial, bro."
Yeah. And then my next note is Xavier steps in and straight up just wants to like telepathically raw dog Mesmero.
Well, because he's like, well, you could tell us, or I'm not going to be as gentle as her. And then he doesn't really give Mesmero much of a time to decide and just fucking goes for it. So
yeah, Mesmero reveals that Apocalypse wants to turn humans into mutants. And then I think that's when Xavier goes in, because he's like kind of slow to give information. So he's like, fine, I'll go in. I guess this is kind of, I don't know if this has been done in the comics, but this reminds me of like the Inhumans story from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff, where like they just try to put that like Terrigen mist over everything, and then like people die, but then other people become, you know, superpowered. Yeah.
Main Marvel Comics has definitely done the Terrigen mist get released, because I believe that's actually how Ms. Marvel, her powers activated. And then they retconned it that it happened before her X gene activated. So she technically has a dormant X gene in the comics, so that's why she's both. But yeah, there's definitely been stories not in the main continuity, but I could be wrong, because there's 70 plus years of continuity at this point, where they were successful in activating it. The closest one I could think of is actually the Ninja Turtles comic from IDW, which has been coming out in recent years. And they basically set an ooze bomb off over a portion of New York and turned an entire neighborhood into just all the mutanimals and such. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I guess I was saying is I didn't know if like the turn everybody into a mutant specifically story had happened in comics.
No, but only because I think there's a concession that they're saying lots and lots of people here have dormant X genes. Yeah. Which I don't remember in the comics dormant X genes being discussed, as opposed to like it just hasn't activated yet, like the Ms. Marvel scenario. I can't think of ones where it's like, oh, there's a bunch of people just waiting to be. Yeah. Although that could be Planet X/Marvels. But I haven't read that in like 15 years, so that one's really hard for me to remember.
But that concept of a dormant X gene is that's one of the early like, oh, I'm gonna like this episode, because it's such a fascinating idea to me, because like I haven't seen it yet, because I'm familiar with the original animated series and stuff. And it's like, what an interesting thing for Apocalypse. That seems like an Apocalypse agenda that's like not super cliched, you know.
Well, it's also the whole like, if you do this, then all of a sudden you basically have a living arms race. Because think about all the people who, if they had the super gun right now, how many of them would start using it? And then what does it look like when everybody else is defending themselves with their own superpowers? You know? Yeah. So it's not a one-to-one with the stories we've seen of him in Survival of the Fittest, but it definitely fits his ethos very well.
And that's when I feel like the whenever someone like a different take on Marvel happens, that's when it like fits the best. Is when like this is what I've been complaining about with Storm in the movies forever. It's like, it's not specifically Halle Berry, it's not specifically like costuming or anything. It's just like man, like they just really did not know that character, and then did this story around it, and like you can change things and still do it okay. This was one of those things where like I wasn't familiar with the Apocalypse story specific to this, but it didn't feel wrong. So
no, totally, it totally felt with it. So yeah, agreed. Yeah, I see that your Christmas tree's running.
Yeah, my Christmas tree's running away. Where are you going? Are you trying to get down here? No. Are you just trying to... You went down. Please don't jump. Okay. Say Merry Christmas, Lucy, before you run away. Merry Christmas. Okay.
She's thrilled. You can tell she's thrilled.
She probably just wants to go poop or something. I don't know where she's going.
Yeah.
Now you've got my headphones.
I mean, it is a cat.
Lucy, here.
Thank God we're a video show now.
Yeah. Okay. Here you go. Oh, that's my headphones. Come on. There you go. Okay. I'm back. Are you just going to sit there and stare at me now?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway.
Apocalypse.
Yeah, Apocalypse. Apocalypse is great. The X-Men realize that the pyramids are all the different pyramids that are under the orbs are powered by the Sphinx, which is such a I'm doing some music right now for something that's supposed to be like a Y2K like action mission. Mm-hmm. I imagine this like, oh, the Sphinx is powering the other pyramids, you know?
Well, that's when Professor X goes into Mesmero's mind and he sees those flashes of the pyramids lighting up and realizes that that's how it happens. So, yeah.
And once again, we'll get more into this as this episode and the next episode goes along. But, like, Xavier gets worse. But only by implications. Like, it's like, wait, when you really think about what's happening, you're like, wait, okay. So... he just makes a snap decision that he needs to do. He just leaves. Jean kind of gives him a side eye. This is the first time I had to rewind because like, why should she give him a side eye? And then we find out in the next scene it's because either they didn't make it clear, but either she just knows him well enough, or there was some telepathic thing happening. Because I remember these are both telepaths. That she goes and confronts him as he's getting on the X-Jet, which is like a very quick. There was no like. No
team meeting or anything. Yeah. This was just we're going.
And she was like, hey, if they took out Magneto, no offense, but like I don't know how much of a chance you stand. And it was like, you know, I could talk to him, and she's like, I don't know if that's gonna work.
Yeah. I think it was like a 5-minute discussion where it was him and Storm are like, you're giving me a ride there, and Beast, I need you to be on the ground back here and be ready with the Cerebro connection. I think that was literally it. So
yeah, and then Jean was like, well, if it's so safe, then like I'll go with you because the two of us will be better. And then that's when Xavier kind of comes clean. He's like, so if anything were to happen, I just need someone else to hold the fort down here. And then he used the very like movie phrase. I don't want to call it a cliche, but it's like the be strong. Like you're the one that like stuff's gonna hit the fan, and you need to pick up where I left off kind of scenario. And it's interesting because it's not Scott who's in that scenario taking over in his place. So because he hasn't quite leveled up yet in this.
I feel like most of them haven't leveled up. It's really there's a clear line still between Xavier, Storm, Logan, Beast, and then Jean and Scott and the rest of the kids, you know? Yeah.
And then Xavier just gets on the X-Jet, and that's when Jean just calls him out. She's like, you're not planning on coming back, are you? It's like, okay. So all of this writing already is just leaps beyond anything we've seen so far in this show. Because even that moment...
You mean in terms of like being heavy and such? Yeah.
Heavy, but also just like a little less like just black and white, you know, with everything. Just be like, you know, I feel like so many other scenes are like, it's like, I'm this character and I'm gonna do this, and like, oh no, that's just magma, you know, like, and in this case, there was like the fact that I was catching on to like expressions on animated characters' faces, you know, like, why she give him a side eye and this and it's like, it's got me thinking about motivations and stuff, which I just was not wired for this show, you know, yet, but they just only like accelerate it from here. And so, yeah.
Real quick, I do have to interject this. Have you watched Lego Avengers? I think it's called Demolition.
I don't think
Wrecking.
so.
It's about oh my god, why am I damage control. It's about the company that cleans up after stuff gets destroyed.
Oh, okay.
Won't spoil anything from it. It's cute. It's a kid thing, but during the end credits, there are fake Disney Plus ads for fake shows, and that's just magma. Sounded like it would have been one of those shows.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just like, I know I exaggerated that a little bit, but it's just like every character kind of had that like sitcom trope, like each character had like one thing they did. And that's not bad. It's just like I was wired for that show for all but these last 2 episodes. And then suddenly I would even argue that these last 2 episodes like are like on par with like the 92 series, like just of action storytelling. Like the characters look a little bit more complex. I'm not saying they're like, super complex or anything, but like I'm thinking about like what are they going to do, and I don't know. It's a whole bunch of stuff. And so next we catch up with Apocalypse at the Sphinx, and he, I don't know, for lack of better words, he like activates everything.
Yeah. I put triggers, but yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that's another like good like positive for the storytelling here is like essentially just pulling a bunch of levers and touching things and making things light up, but I don't even know how it works. Like I just know like he's the pilot of this thing that's happening. And so Storm and Xavier are on the X-Jet on their way over, and Storm is like doing one last like trying to talk him out of whatever he's about to do. And because he said he's going to talk to him, but like no one really knows what, because he's not just going to be like, hey, please don't do that,
Yeah, I'm really curious what he thinks he's going to do. Like, is he actually going to talk to him, or is he going to say he's going to talk to him, and then because this is shades of gray Xavier, is he just going to like try to take him out? Like, what is he actually planning to do here?
Yeah. So. Or if like, I feel like another Xavier would have something in his back pocket. Like if this wasn't a completely new Apocalypse, like this Apocalypse literally just like came out of a hole, earlier this season. But like if another Xavier would be like, oh, I knew the child version or something, or I knew your mother, or whatever, like, but there's none of that here. So I don't know what.
Martha.
Yeah, Martha. We'll just say it's Martha. Zack Snyder's X-Men. Martha.
It felt dirty.
and so in Apocalypse is still activating things. This is just kind of this like back and forth. Xavier's just like, no, I can do something. I don't even know if he said he's going to talk to him. They land, and Xavier goes out of the jet, and he tells Storm to like stay behind, and Storm is like, no. Because
it was the most Storm moment of the series, where it's, if you think she was basically saying, if you think you could tell me to leave and that I would leave, or that I would listen to you, you don't know me. That was the vibe I got from her on that. Yeah,
because he was like, if things get too crazy, then I want you to get far away. And she's like, in what world would that happen? Yeah. Like, why am I here to begin with? Just a pilot. You could have flown here by yourself,
Yeah, was it to just not give Apocalypse a free jet? Like, was that the...
Which minor spoiler, he gets later. So Storm kind of goes out with him, but Xavier puts on the Cerebro helmet, and I have no idea how this version of Cerebro works. There's like a remote option, I guess. But also, this is a better plan than I thought maybe was going to happen. He was like, with Cerebro, I can like amplify my powers and stuff. But what it seemed like the main function of it was to telecast holograms.
Yeah, to stream it to Beast.
Yeah, and then he was like, make sure the kids aren't watching, and Beast is like, too late. And so the kids are just watching, and then Xavier's like, well, we tried our best. Okay, kids, watch me get murdered. And all the kids are like, we're not going to let you do this alone. We're like, well, what are you going to do there? Besides maybe Gene? Like...
That's like me watching Logan or Jake Paul fight Mike Tyson and be like, don't worry, I'm there with you, Mike. Like, that's what it was.
Yeah, it's like sports fans wearing their favorite socks or something.
Thinking that that's going to change the outcome. Yeah, because I'm screaming at my TV 3,000 miles away. Yeah.
And yeah, they just kind of move past that. And then Xavier basically like signals to Apocalypse that he's there, and Apocalypse comes out, and he's in familiar form, because for the rest of the show he was in like the Egyptian version of everything, you know, with like the headpiece and everything. When he came out here, he's a different design, obviously, because his whole show is like a little different design, but he looks like the Apocalypse.
He's got blue with the techno-organic stuff versus what we'd seen, which was kind of like pseudo skinny, frail, getting powered up. Like, now he looked like our version of Apocalypse within the art style. So.
Yeah. And then they talk for a while telepathically, so I couldn't tell if that's just like Apocalypse just communicating to Xavier in the way that Xavier had opened up, or if this implying that Apocalypse is a little telepathic too because of the whole Rogue situation. You know,
I got a vibe he has this form of Apocalypse has some form of telepathy because of ways he has interactions with the Horsemen later in the other episode. So
also just broad blanket, not even spoiler but power limitations don't matter from this point on.
No, none whatsoever.
Any expectations for powers, nothing matters. Nightcrawler could shoot lasers out of his eyes, and that would probably still just be part of the story for whatever reason. I think it got so ridiculous at one point. I was like, oh, they just want us to let go of thinking about this completely. So that's fine. I appreciate that, where it's like, take it far enough so it's not in the uncanny valley. It's just so far that we're just not supposed to worry about it.
Yeah. I love that they're having the conversation, and it's literally just like, you know, you're trying to control the destiny of the human race, and it's like, well, you know, they haven't really done a great job by themselves, so.
Which, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that Apocalypse, he kind of did what T'Challa did in the MCU with his origin story. It was like, you know, someone wants him to tell his origin story. He's like, there is no time. And like, okay. So Apocalypse basically says like that spacecraft that came down, like,
told him everything.
He absorbed he merged with it. Okay, that's all you need to know. Anyway, now I'm going to go take over the world. And so what was it? How was it worded? He was like, I'm not planning anything. I'm embracing what was like already like destined or something, basically.
I'm an instrument of destiny.
Yeah, so he was just like, I merged with the spacecraft, and I'm just like kind of like another inevitable like domino falling, I guess, or something. Like, it's just part of it's not his plan. He's just part of the bigger whatever universal thing.
And part of that could also be considered manipulation, because if you remember, Rama Tut, who had something to do with the spaceship coming down, could just make Apocalypse think that this is extraterrestrial, etc. So even if it wasn't intentional, it could be seen as he is believing destiny, just because that's what the future that Rama Tut wants him to think it is. So he basically, you know, it's a become your own grandfather scenario. So
I forgot that he was even part of this whole thing.
I mean, it was there for like a 0.5 seconds.
Yeah.
Of the show, so.
Yes, it's even from the beginning. Marvel's trying not to think about Kang. Like, let's get rid of him. But
and then we get the worst animation of the entire 2 episodes.
I didn't notice. I was looking down a lot to write notes, so.
So that's where like the fight basically starts. Cerebro gets removed. Storm comes out and fails to take him out, but everything is going at like a 4 frame per second like rate. It was like it was very similar to in the animated series that when Magneto would start shooting his energy thing, everything slowed down to a lower frame rate. That's what happened here. So
I think they were trying to emulate like a slow motion thing, but it was like kind of passable to kids back in the 2000s, but like just not in a
modern era. It does not flow
in a world of 60 to 120 frames. Like, we noticed the 4 frames. Yeah, I had here like he basically kind of just flicks off Cerebro or the Cerebro remote or whatever, and for a second, it looked like Storm almost had him. Right, like this is the way
for
he
a quick second. She actually like made him like think.
Yeah, and then Apocalypse essentially does what he did to Magneto to both of them at once. Yep. So
Sailor Moons him.
Yeah, Sailor Moons him, and which is kind of funny. This is a time that you were kind of more right about something random, because like about the Sailor Moon thing, because it is more of a transition than than a making a go away. So like. And the kids are horrified because they're watching in real time, And I think
they just watched their mentor and one of their teachers get turned to dust as far as they know.
Yeah, and I think that's layered because it's like, okay, these are people you're close to. Also, they were like the most powerful people you know. But also, he just, without any extra effort, seemingly did twice the amount of the thing making go away as before. Like Magneto was like one thing. They're like, oh, he just did it twice without even like blinking, again. So like now it's just like a signal of that we have no concept of what the limits of power are here. And Jean runs away crying. Scott tries to console her. I don't know if this is my imagination. Scott sounds younger in this episode, but that might just be me.
It might be you. That didn't register to me. I did feel like in these episodes, Scarlet Witch sounded differently, but that could also just be me. So,
and then Nick Fury shows up at the mansion. I keep forgetting that Wolverine's his main point of contact. So Wolverine is talking to him. Wolverine vouches for him when he comes into the war room or wherever. Which is a nice little touch. Once again, like all these like little things in the writing. There's just consideration of like how people would act. And Nick Fury's like, it's like we're here to keep you from retaliating. We're like, what? How are you?
Because he saw everything that happened. He was watching it in real time. Because at first Logan's like, yeah, we got some of our own shit going on, and Fury's like, I know, I watched it happen.
Yeah, and then he was like, well, we have our own plan, and we don't. It would complicate things if more mutants were around. And he pulls up a feed of like the Sentinels program being like reanimated. And of course, everyone's pissed off because they're like
at the Sphinx already. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like of all the things, you brought that back. Once again, like this is such great writing because that was like a red herring to the audience as well as the characters in the show, but in the tone of like how the show would normally do things. We're like, oh, Nick Fury had a dumb idea. It's not going to work. And then now the X-Men are going to have to do what they're going to do anyway. So that rolls Trask back into everything. And I feel like kind of like, I mean, obviously I would have liked to seen a little bit more of that, but that was satisfying enough because we had that little seed before that they teamed up with Trask.
Yeah, so where they pulled him out of jail being like, we need you to start the program again. Yeah.
Yeah, so at least it came back in a little bit. So we see the Sentinels attacking and Apocalypse.
3 of them specifically.
Yeah, 3.
I feel like they didn't have enough time to make as many Sentinels as they needed.
Right. And Apocalypse shoots one and then immediately gets blasted by the others. And once again, like so outside of the story writing, the choreography, this whole fight, I didn't know what was going to happen. Like, which is a complete change from. I feel like every other fight I could like just predict in this entire series. I'm used to writing notes while watching this show, seeing a fight start and being like, "Storm wins," or like. And this one is like, I don't know how this is going to go. I mean, obviously, Apocalypse is going to get further than these guys, but it looks like that there's a little bit of an actual fight happening here. And then when I saw Apocalypse like wind back, I was like, oh, he's going to do it. And then but he didn't blast through the Sentinel. I was like, he's going to possess that freaking thing.
See, I thought he was going to like full-fledged cannonball right through the center of it. I thought it was like fastball special style. And then when he didn't go out of it and he possessed it, I was like, oh, that's...
Yeah.
For the world where Apocalypse has a different set of powers, that's cool, and I dug it.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was going to be a fastball special until it didn't like break anything. And when it phased through, I was like, oh, shit, okay. That was really cool.
I love that it actually changed color, too. It wasn't just like... oh, it was in control. It literally blued out too. So,
and I kind of wish that he would have kept that form for longer or the rest of the episode, because then we could have gotten that story of like Apocalypse changing sizes, and kind of. But
yeah,
there's probably some reason like it would have thrown a kink into the story, or like way too expensive to animate a Sentinel for the entire rest of the show or something. I don't know, but it was a cool moment. And then the Apocalypse Sentinel takes out the other ones and then explodes out of the one he's in. And then Wolverine's like, all right, well, and this is the second. Wolverine said what like I normally say at the show is like, well, is that the best you got? And then Fury pulls that Uno reverse and he was like, that was just the diversion. I was like, I'm so excited about this. Is finally like a superhero show.
Yeah.
and he shows the other domes, and there's more Sentinels being sent to them. Fury explains that, like, I couldn't remember, it was like subatomic something, sci-fi language for to get through the dome, like spreads the particles.
Atomic subdividers. I wrote it down.
Sure. I would love for
it was basically, we're not just going to shoot explosives at them because we realized that doesn't work. So we've learned. That was what he was getting at. So
I would love if there's a physicist out there to take that phrase and be like, it's probably not real, but if it were, does that track? Or does that mean like he had like a lemonade maker or something? You know what I mean? Like because sometimes people come up with like sci-fi words and they're like, oh, if that was a real world, that actually means something really docile. You know?
Well, I did do that panel at LA Comic-Con, and I forget her name off the top of my head, but there was
Does It Fly?
The podcaster who does, what is it? Does It Work? Or
I think it's Does It Fly?
Does It Fly? Yeah. And now I feel like an asshole for not remembering her name because I'm on the spot. But one day maybe because she's way more successful than we are, maybe we could get her to slum with us and go through all the dumb science of this show.
Yeah, no, that'd be fun.
No.
So the other Sentinels start trying to take out the dome, but as soon as Apocalypse is finished with the diversion Sentinels, he recognizes the other one. I guess that's a testament to what you said about him having somewhat of a telepathy, because he's able to sense the other domes under attack.
Yes.
And then this is just like Uno reverse after Uno reverse. Then he's like, I guess I gotta...
Tamara Krinsky. I would have felt like an asshole if I went through the episode didn't shout her out, because, again, way more talented than we are and smart as shit.
Definitely more educated, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so Apocalypse, unearths some shadowy figures, and I'm like, why didn't I think of this? That's what they were doing.
I love the reveal of those, where it was those random pillars that looked like they were just architecture, and then it pops up, and the outlines of them I thought was really funny, because it was like there was a guy, a girl, eyes, and then armor. That was like how it like popped up for me. So yeah.
Even before the silhouettes though, like when I realized like, oh, he's pulling out the horseman, and then it clicked in the same second, like he made 4 people disappear. Or I guess 3.
We only knew he made 3
disappear.
Yeah.
I'm still not quite sure on the logistics of the Mystique thing, but that's fun. Like, once again, powers don't matter here.
He went to the beach and he had a dustpan or a vacuum and just pulled. So that means Nightcrawler left the pieces of his just like dead mother there.
Yeah.
So
or
just.
They bury them and I don't know, whatever.
He just buried them right where they landed because he was already on the dirt.
Sure, yeah. But I was like, yeah, essentially there's 4 people missing, right? That were main characters. Like, oh my God, they're doing that. And I laughed immediately though, because I was like, I wasn't too far off with Boom Boom being a horseman.
So this did get spoiled for me because of an image online that popped in my feed at one point, where I saw what we're going to see, in front of the camera in a second, where it was the 4 of them all next to each other with the eyepieces on.
Okay.
I was like, oh, well, this has to be that. There's like, I've made it through the entire series and not seen that image. So I knew after last week's episode, that had to be what it was. So.
Wouldn't it be great though if you knowing all that, you watch this episode, it's like, how was Boom Boom a horseman? I literally saw the spoiler images. Like the timeline just Mandela affected itself.
You leave my girl Boom Boom alone, for fuck's sake.
No, but I was just saying, like, the universe is so, like, hell-bent on, like, making my random predictions right that it just, like, Mandela affects the timeline.
It actually retconned the event, yeah. Because all of a sudden everybody will be like, no, Mystique was the 4th horseman, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then they rewatch it and they're like, why is Boom Boom the 4th horseman?
But and as we've alluded to, the 4 horsemen show up, and it's the 3 people that Apocalypse made disappear as Magneto, Storm, and Xavier, and then Mystique is one of the horsemen, which makes sense. But once again, in this series, we're not quite sure like how that panned out, but maybe it was just like an energy thing, because everybody's kind of... Mystique specifically he said everybody's leveled up in powers. Mystique, I feel like, was exponentially way more than the rest of them.
Mystique has had 2 power-ups now, too.
Right. Oh, yeah,
that's
true.
She had her Magneto power-up and now has had this power-up. after being turned into a pile of like broken rocks.
Yeah.
So who knows?
She's gone through a lot.
Yeah. I did like as he's calling for them and they're walking up the stairs, you see that he is in giant mode though. Like he does shrink back down during that little comment, but you did get the giant apocalypse for a hot second after he blew up out of the Sentinel. So
that's true, yeah. So he sends Xavier to go protect the other pyramid in Egypt. Storm goes to China, Magneto goes to Mexico. And then that's when Fury turns around and is like, okay, well, I'm out of ideas. Now we need your help.
So the only thing that I thought was like a little bit weird, they all had those weird like eye masks on. Like I get there was like the little like patches on them that was like those were like the control. And they had collars on, but they had like weird domino masks, basically like old school like 1950s superhero masks on them, like they were the fucking Umbrella Academy.
Yeah, they were like, well, nobody will recognize us with these on.
Like it fucking matters.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I will say from a design perspective, that was not one of my favorite choices of the show. Gotcha. I love the concept. I do not like the redesign. Like, you know, it's not as impactful as Angel becoming Archangel / Death, you know, that
they didn't become like each of the like representations of the things that the horsemen were. But I also guess like that's another thing, if they would have had more time then maybe, but they were just supposed to be bodyguards basically at this point.
Yeah, all the wikis. Only one I saw that referenced it was IMDb, and of course, there's no source needed to put a trivia fact on IMDb. Mm-hmm. But somebody made the assumption that Xavier was death, Magneto was war, Storm was famine, and Mystique was pestilence. Magneto is the strongest of that for me, and maybe Storm because she could destroy crops, and then it kind of like defaults to who the other two are. Like it's not as convincing as other times where I've seen, what we know is going to happen in X-Men 97 season 2 with who becomes the Horseman of Death and stuff like that. So boom. She isn't dead. She is not. She's going to save everybody. Fucking watch.
She's just going to want to be part of things and then like volunteer to be a horseman.
Yeah. But yeah, and everybody is shocked, obviously, when they see this.
Yeah, they're like, they're still alive. And my reaction would be like, because I'm a Mortal Kombat fan, is like, they're animated? Because like, this was very much like a Revenant kind of thing. Like, they don't look alive.
They kind of look like zombies.
Their bodies are there. And then Logan really shows that he's like a leader for, I want to say, if not the first time, at least the biggest time. Like he's the most leader that he's ever been here, because he just kind of takes command and he tells Kitty to get the Brotherhood, Nightcrawler to go find Spike, Scott and Jean find anybody else you can round up, and I guess that included the small children. And then Rogue was going to go with Wolverine. We see Kitty go to the Brotherhood house. Lance actually brings up a good point. They're not good people anyway. But he's like, if Magneto couldn't take them, what makes you think any of us? And they show like Blob on the couch and then Toad being Toad. And we're like, it's a good point. But Wanda comes down, overhears it, and doesn't say anything and just like walks out to Kitty. And Lance is like, well, you're going to go try to save your dad? It was like, these people are...
Was it save your dad or fight your dad?
Probably fight your dad.
Yeah.
We have to keep remembering that Wanda has this like messed up memory right now of Magneto. So we're not quite sure where her head's at.
And we don't ever really get a resolution on that either.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of like we see a action happen, but they don't say anything. And then in Mexico, the Sentinels are able to evade Magneto for the most part. And they take out the dome, but then immediately after taking out the dome, Magneto gets rid of the two of the Sentinels, I think.
Yeah, it's the whole like, well, of course he's going to win because he can control metal.
Right. And these aren't plastic Sentinels yet.
No, these are not the fiber, what is it? Carbon fiber Sentinels.
And then in China, basically the same thing happens in every other place. Like in China, Xavier takes out the Sentinels, but then like one takes out the dome.
Storm is in China. Xavier's in Egypt.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm reading the line. So Storm...
real quick with Xavier though. One, he's walking, so the control over the horseman stuff gives him the ability to walk again. He also makes a ghost scythe where he's literally like, he looked like like, to your point, he's like a Mortal Kombat character where he just pulls out a spirit weapon.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of Psylocke a little bit. I thought that's where they were kind of going with
Somebody else said that too. I, to this day, do not remember a time where I've seen Psylocke pull out like an honest to God scythe.
Oh yeah.
But I guess I saw that online too.
I just mean when she uses the blade that comes out of the psionic blade or whatever thing.
Yeah.
So in China, so Storm. Oh, okay. So I mixed this up. So in China, Sentinels take out the dome, and then Storm tornadoes them away. Then in Egypt, Xavier takes out the Sentinels, but one's left over to take out the dome. Then
I put Ninja Xavier as kicking ass.
Yeah, he's parkour everywhere.
Yeah,
they really want to.
And that was before parkour was a common phrase.
And then Beast is in the chopper, and 100th time now, great writing. He's kind of giving everybody the pep talk from the chopper, telling them like things are going to be hard. I feel like they tested the limits of the network censors of telling everybody like you might not make it home, but we got to do our best.
Yeah.
Then at the Sphinx, and this is, God.
This is where Rod started yelling at the screen. And I literally was like, there's no way Rod is going to not say, like, what the fuck, as you see the 3 scorpions, right?
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily yelling. I just kind of glitched for a second. Because I was like, okay, they were talking about, like, the powers being enhanced and stuff. Yeah, so 3 scorpions merge into Mystique. And then
immediately turns into a bird for no reason whatsoever.
So I think the unnecessary mediary was more of like the frustration.
Yeah.
Of course, the 3 scorpions going into 1 was like that was the glitch. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I have so many questions, the logistics of that. If 1 scorpion gets squished, is she missing an arm now? Like what happens?
Half of her left cheek is just missing.
Right? It's like, that's thinking too. Maybe this is the thing we asked tomorrow about is like, how would that work? She's like, please get me off this podcast.
She would say that 5 minutes into the podcast, regardless of what the question was. So yeah.
But then like when she immediately turned into a bird and flew away, I was like, I guess, okay, I'm thinking about this out loud now in real time. Is that the limitation of the power up? Is that she can't go from thing to thing to thing? Like she has to go back to.
No, because in the next episode she literally does it.
Oh, probably. Okay. Anyway,
and that stood out to me because I was thinking the same thing. Like she has to go animal to Mystique into other animal. No, she does not.
So I know story-wise, it was to show us that's Mystique.
Of course.
Logistically, I just can't. It's just so many things happening at once. The glitching of the multiple animals, and then the fast. It was so much. Yeah. So then Magneto fights off the last Sentinel. Yes. Essentially, they show everybody doing the horsemen doing the same thing. Each of the horsemen fight off the last Sentinel. Storm does the same thing. Xavier does the same thing.
Yeah. My comment for Storm was Storm is cool.
Yeah. My God. Like, with the exception of how Storm is portrayed in basically the entirety of 97, this is pretty close to like one of my favorite. Like, I love Storm when she's like in power and like just like a scotch away from being unhinged, you know? Because I think totally uncontrollable Storm is, I think we saw that a couple times in 92, is like, it's not the most settling thing to see. I think, was it Proteus or something that took her over? Like,
was it when she was with the fuckboy from the other planet?
Yeah, that's probably what it was. Those are like, okay, I don't want to see her like
the not Thor character.
Yeah. We don't have the rights for that yet. I don't think me or most people love seeing like Storm when she's like not in control, but like when she's like right there and just kind of like gives no fucks, but still controlling
the try and push me Storm.
Yeah. So that was really cool. Xavier
and then Xavier runs up the side of a fucking pyramid. And this isn't like the regular pyramid where there are like steps. This is the fucking sleek metal pyramid. And he, like, I paid attention. He still has his shoes that look like loafers on. Like, he is not in something that should be able to do that.
And also, it kind of made the scale of the pyramid a little weird because I feel like the pyramid shrunk. He got bigger, you know? the scale, but
I mean, yeah,
is nitpicking. But then he basically like mounts the top of the pyramid, and then that's when Boom Boom, Jamie, Jean, Colossus, and I think that's Magma in this.
It is. Yep.
There, she was just and then we see the next team is Nightcrawler, Wolverine, and Cyclops. I was unclear at that moment where they were because I don't think
that was the Sphinx crew.
Okay, that was the Sphinx.
Yep. It didn't help that you transitioned from one Egypt location directly to another Egypt location.
Yeah.
So I totally see why that might be like a little like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Spike, Beast, Iceman, Berserker?
Yep.
Okay.
We're in China.
In China with Storm. And then Sunspot, Kitty, Angel, and then I'm assuming by elimination that's Cannonball.
No, that was Havoc.
That was Havoc. Okay.
That was Havoc. That was Scott's brother.
Okay. So that was, man, what a random, okay.
No, so what was weird is as I was watching it, it didn't register with me who wasn't there. I completely forgot about Sam, and I completely forgot about Rogue.
Okay, yeah.
And I wasn't expecting the Brotherhood kids to show up. I wasn't expecting like Morlocks to show up. I was a little surprised to see Angel just there.
Right,
so
pop up.
Yeah.
And then
but I get it, because they're probably just like, we need everybody who is willing to do it, and the Morlocks are not leaving the sewers.
Yeah. And then Wanda was with this last team.
Yes. And then it went into a split screen of like quadrants of each of the four teams, with a very like menacing to be continued at the end of it.
Yeah. And that was great. Of course I wanted to see more, but as far as like 2000s, late 90s cartoons go and stuff, that was the most exciting episode in this series yet, I think. I loved how well everything wove together, like within the time constraints of having a 20-minute episode. Like, I think they managed like a lot of stuff well, besides maybe some of like the random characters at the end. Like, but that's not even like a deal breaker. That's just like okay, they're there. Like
Angel, cool, because Angel's easy to identify because of the wings. But like, to your point, like, when is the last time we even saw? Did we ever even see Havoc in a uniform? Like, I don't remember. It's season 1. Did we see him in a uniform for even an episode? You know?
Yeah. And then there's that's another thing I forgot to mention. When Wolverine told Kitty to get the Brotherhood, he said Shadowcat. Have they called her Shadowcat yet in this?
She has been Shadowcat in every single intro since the start of the show.
But I mean, have the characters called her that?
They had to have at one point when there was like a conversation about code names or something like that.
But I think that was the first time that I heard someone like look her in the eye and be like, Shadowcat. I feel like everybody else was talking like, hey, Kitty, come on, do this, whatever. Like, I don't know, that might just be my memory. But
here's the problem. Not only is it 52 episodes and she was in like 50 of the 52 episodes, but in between we had X-Men 97.
Yeah.
So at some point we experienced emotional trauma, and I don't remember the stuff that happened before that.
Yeah. If it wasn't the first time, it was the first time in a long time.
It was the first time where it was so prominent. I will agree with you on that. Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah. Everything just like pointed at this being like, wow, this is a superhero show. Like, this felt like the TV version of Endgame before Endgame happened. Like, there's like, who do we have licenses for? Who can we animate? We're gonna show up.
To an extent, it's a little bit like when they did Crisis on the Arrowverse stuff for CW, where it was just like, let's get all the crossover of every single property that we got permission with into these episodes. Yeah.
I could never get into the DC TV stuff.
I think my biggest problem is I just never really cared about Arrow or Green Arrow as a character. And it has nothing to do with the Hawkeye stuff, because I didn't care about Oliver Queen for as long as I've been involved in comic books. Like, I think the only versions of Ollie that I've ever actually read were the Injustice comic book, and then I want to say it was Deceased, which is the DC comic. It's like the alternate universe where there's the zombie plague, and he's a pretty prominent part of that first book from that series. But that's really the only times I could think of like read Oliver, liked Oliver Queen. So
what was the series of all the time travelers?
The Series of All the Time Travelers.
It was a long title. It ran at least 2 seasons. It was a DC show. I remember watching that and being like, I'm never going to give the DC TV shows a
Heroes of Tomorrow?
That sounds right.
In the same era as the... it had like Captain Cold was in it, and he was the dude from Jailbreak or whatever it was.
I think so, yeah.
Prison Break.
Yeah, Prison Break. Yeah.
Same dude who was Captain Cold was the dude from Prison Break. He was the Jack brother.
And there was that guy with the split... not personality. He had I don't know, consciousness or something. Anyway, I just remember that show being so bad that I was like, never again am I like
I think I watched 2 episodes of it and I didn't think it was bad. I just didn't get into it and I never went back to it.
It was a culmination of just like a lot of things. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But the thing that really like when I turned it off and never turned it back on again was every time they time traveled and they were in essentially a spaceship and they did the Shatner era, Star Trek, like, oh, we're traveling. And everybody...
See, I didn't watch enough episodes for that to even register.
Every time they traveled, they would do this. And the camera's moving, but you could tell that the actors themselves were like... and I was like, I don't need this.
So I think it's a little hard for me to give my feelings on the episode because it ties so much into what we're going to be talking about on next week's episode. But I will end this for us with the announcement for those of you who have been following us. We are absolutely continuing on in 2025. We are doing Wolverine and the X-Men. But we are going to be moving to a bi-weekly show because there are 25 episodes and we need to kill time and not just have to force content. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go bi-weekly. It will have, every other week is a Wolverine and the X-Men episode. And if we have other content, like at some point I have to build this fucking Lego set that's been sitting on the floor next to me for almost a month.
It's going to take a month to build.
Or interviews, things like that. We'll insert those in odd weeks.
Yeah.
But this is just the heads up. We're moving to being bi-weekly for our content. So
yeah. And I saved Wolverine and the X-Men on Disney Plus. It looks intriguing so far, so I'm excited to check it out. But so we'll continue this conversation next week. And thanks for joining us.
AKA 5 minutes away from us.
If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them into the comments for the YouTube upload or official Instagram post about this episode. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app you're choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, and one more week for Evolution to make us number 1 on CastBox.
You know what, though? As a Christmas gift to us, leave us a review on a site that actually matters, like Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, it's free. We like that. You like that.